Was a national poll had us 1 point up. In the last number of months, we have won 11 state primaries and caucuses. A few days ago, we won in Idaho and Utah with 78% of the vote. If there is a large voter turnout tomorrow in Washington, I think we're going to do just fine here. And for all the folks from Washington, caucus is at 10 o'clock. Get there earlier. And for all the folks in Portland and in Oregon, you know that the all the folks in Oregon. See, that's what happens when you run all over the country. Okay, you're going to have your mail-in primary, and it's important. And I know the state here has done everything that it can appropriately to try to increase voter turnout. Please fill out those ballots as early as possible. Now, you know, one of the criticisms that has been thrown at our campaign is that, well, you know, Bernie's a nice guy, he has good ideas, but he can't win a general election, and I just wanted to deal with that issue. All of us agree, or I expect all of us who are here today agree, that it would be an unmitigated disaster for our country if somebody like a Donald Trump became president of the United States. Now, the thought of Trump in the White House brings forth rather strange reactions in our stomach, leading to nausea and other symptoms. But here's the good news. Donald Trump is not going to become president of the United States. And the reason for that is the American people are much too smart to allow that to happen. And I'm happy to tell you that in virtually every national and statewide poll, virtually all of them, that has been done having Bernie Sanders up against Donald Trump, we win with overwhelming numbers. The last CNN poll, and you know, some of these numbers vary depending on the poll, had us beating Trump by 20 points. And the reason why Donald Trump will never become president of the United States is the American people will not vote for a candidate who insults Mexicans and Latinos. The American people understand that we are fighting a war now to destroy ISIS a terrorist organization, not Islam a religion. The American people will not vote for a presidential candidate who insults women every day. Who insults veterans. And who insults African Americans. And I want you all to remember something that some people have forgotten, and that is that before Trump became a candidate, he was one of the leaders in the so-called birther movement. You remember that? And it is important for all of us to understand what that very, very ugly movement was about. It wasn't disagreeing with President Obama. People have the right to do that for sure. It was trying to delegitimize his presidency. It was trying to say that he really doesn't have the right to be president because he was not born in America, a total lie. And that is a very dangerous thing to do in a democracy. It was not only an insult to the African American community, with Obama being the first African American president, it was the insult to all of us. Now, the president's father was born in Kenya. My father was born in Poland. I find it interesting that nobody has asked me for my birth certificate. Do you think maybe it just might have something to do with the color of my skin as opposed to Obama's? I think so. Now, this campaign is doing well because we are listening to the American people and not billionaire campaign contributors. When we began this campaign, we had to ask ourselves a very simple question. Sadly, to run for president today requires raising hundreds of millions of dollars. That's the sad truth. And we had to decide, will we establish a super PAC and beg corporate America and billionaires and Wall Street for money? We agreed with you. And I'm the only candidate out there that does not have a super PAC, does not want a super PAC, does not need a super PAC. Now, all of you know, every person here knows, that one of the great crises that we face as a nation is that this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision is now enabling billionaires to buy elections. And what we said is, look, this campaign does not represent Wall Street. We don't represent corporate America. We do not represent the billionaire class. We do not want their money. And we went out, instead of doing a super PAC, we went out to the middle class and working families in this country, and we said, if you want to support a campaign which is going to transform America, which is going to take on the big money interest, help us out. And in 10 months, we have received almost 6 million individual campaign contributions. And that in itself is revolutionary, because what we have shown is you can run a national winning campaign without being dependent on big money interests. Anybody here know what our average campaign contribution is? That's right, $27. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, this is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now, Secretary Clinton has chosen another path in order to raise her campaign funds. She has established a number of super PACs, and in the last filing report, her largest super PAC reported $25 million coming from powerful special interests, including $15 million from Wall Street. In addition to that, Secretary Clinton, as you know, has given a number of speeches behind closed doors to powerful Wall Street institutions for $225,000 a speech. Now, what I have said is that if you're going to give a speech and get paid $225,000, it must be an extraordinarily brilliant speech, right? It must be a speech that will address and resolve all of the world's conflicts. It must be a speech written in Shakespearean prose. And for that kind of money, it must be a speech of such great importance that she should share it with the rest of the world. Now, Secretary Clinton has said, well, look, she is prepared to release her transcripts if other people do the same. So I am prepared this morning to make a dramatic statement. I am prepared to release all of the transcripts of the speeches I gave on Wall Street. You ready? And that'll be pretty easy to do because there are no speeches to Wall Street. Now, I don't know, I cannot imagine why it is that Secretary Clinton got $2.25 for her speeches, and they haven't even invited me to go to Wall Street for $20,000 or $2,000 or $2. I don't know why. But it may have something to do that my message to Wall Street might be a little bit different than Secretary Clinton's. And here was what my message to Wall Street will be whenever they choose to invite me. And I got my cell phone on. I am waiting for the ring from Goldman Sachs. Come on down, Bernie. We want to hear from you. But here's what I would say. What I would say is that as a result of the greed and the recklessness and the illegal behavior of the people on Wall Street. This country was plunged into the worst economic downturn in the modern history of this country. What I would say is their greed and illegal behavior resulted in millions of Americans losing their jobs, losing their homes, losing their life savings. What I would say is that today, after Congress bailed out Wall Street against my vote, that today 3 out of the 4 largest banks on Wall Street are bigger than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. And what I would say that when you have a handful of banks with such incredible economic and political power, that it is time to break them up. We need a financial system that works for small and medium-sized businesses, for ordinary Americans, and not just for a handful of CEOs on Wall Street. And this is what I would also tell them. Last month, 5 or 6 weeks ago, Goldman Sachs reached a settlement with the United States government for $5 billion. Now, they were not alone. Other large banks also reached even larger settlements. And the reason they reached that settlement is that they were selling packages of worthless subprime mortgages, defrauding the American people. Now, one of the reasons that so many Americans are angry is they see a criminal justice system which comes down very heavily on the poor and on people of color. In Vermont, Oregon, or any place, some kid gets picked up with marijuana, that kid is likely to have a police record for the rest of his or her life. But apparently, if you are an executive on Wall Street whose greed and illegal behavior destroyed this economy, nothing happens to you. So what Wall Street has got to learn, and corporate America has got to learn, is that we are going to bring justice back to a broken criminal justice system. If you break the law, even if you are a Wall Street executive, you are going to pay the price. All of you know that foreign policy is an enormously important part of what a president does. And on this issue, Secretary Clinton and I have very profound differences. In 2002, in the most important debate on foreign policy in the modern history of this country, I listened very closely to what President Bush and Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld and all those guys had to say. I listened to their ideas and their arguments as to why we should go to war in Iraq. I didn't believe them. I voted against that war. I led the opposition to that war. Secretary Clinton heard the same argument. She was in the Senate, I was in the House, heard exactly the same arguments. She voted for that war. She was wrong. I was right. Right now, all over this country, we are facing a growing crisis in terms of clean, drinkable water. And if anybody thinks it is just a disaster in Flint, Michigan, you would be mistaken. We need policies in this country to protect clean drinking water. I will do my best to phase out fracking. As Secretary of State, Secretary Clinton strongly supported fracking around the world and still supports it in this country. This campaign is doing well because we have taken the radical idea that maybe instead of listening to billionaire campaign contributors, we should listen to ordinary Americans. And what working people are telling me throughout this country is they cannot get by on $9 or $10 an hour, that they cannot take care of their families or themselves on starvation wages, and that we need, and I congratulate Oregon and the state of Washington for making real progress in this area. The simple truth is, in America, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty. Not in Vermont, not in Oregon, not in Washington, and that is why together we are going to raise the national minimum wage to $15 an hour. And this campaign is listening to women. And women are telling me they are tired of sexism, tired of earning 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. And I know that every man in this arena will stand by the women in the fight for justice and pay equity. And this campaign is listening to young people. And one of the gratifying aspects of this campaign is seeing young people, the future of this country, becoming increasingly involved in the political process. To the young people, I say, this is your country, this is your future. Get involved in making the decisions that will impact your lives for decades. And young people are saying to me, how does it happen, Bernie, that for the first time in the modern history of this country, our generation will have a lower standard of living than our parents? How does that happen? There's been an explosion of technology. Workers are producing more. Why is it that we are seeing the American dream disappear? Now, my father came to this country at the age of 17, didn't have a nickel in his pocket, never made any money at all. But he was part of a wave of people who worked hard so that his kids could do better than he and my mom did. And that's what happened. That's called the American dream. And the younger generation does not deserve to see that American dream disappear. And the other point that young people are making to me is they say, look, throughout our lives, our parents, our teachers, everybody said, it's imperative that you go out and get the best education that you can. And that's right. We live in a competitive global economy. We need the best educated workforce possible. And then people say to me, young people say, we did it. We went out to college. We did the right thing. How does it happen that we end up $30,000, $50,000, $70,000 in debt because we got an education? What this campaign is about is asking the American people to think outside of the box, outside of the status quo. Don't accept the reality that the media or corporate America presents to you. That does not have to be the reality of the future. If we need, as we do, the best educated workforce in an increasingly competitive global economy, we should not be punishing millions of people for getting that education. We should be rewarding them. When we talk about public education, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, it was great that we had free public education from the first grade through the 12th grade. That was great. But the world has changed, the economy has changed, technology has changed. People today need more education. And that is why I believe that in the year 2016, when we talk about public education, we've got to be talking about making public colleges and universities tuition free. This is not a radical idea. I mean, here's the truth. Everybody knows this. And it's just a question of thinking outside of the box. 50 years ago, you graduated high school, the odds are you could get a pretty good job and make it into the middle class 50 years ago. Today, in most cases, that is not the situation. Today, in many cases, people need a college degree. What I want to see happen in this country is that every kid in America, I grew up in a family without a lot of money, my parents never went to college. I want every kid in Oregon and Washington and Vermont to understand that if he or she does their schoolwork seriously, does well, takes school. What? Now, you see, this little bird doesn't know it. Oh, I think there may be some symbolism here. I know it doesn't look like it, but that bird is really a dove asking us for world peace. No more wars. In any case, we've got to rethink higher education. We've got to make sure that every kid in this country, this again is not a radical idea. I'm attacked. Oh my God, what a radical idea. Free tuition, public colleges and universities. Everybody here should know that exists in Germany, that exists in Scandinavia. And what is important about that idea is I want children in Portland and Vermont to understand that even if their families don't have a lot of money, if they do well in school, yes, they will be able to get a college education. And we have to deal with another absurdity, and that is we have millions of people in this country who are being suffocated with outrageously high levels of student debt. Anybody here with student debt? Holy God. Let me rephrase the question. Anybody here without student debt? All right. And what we need to do, I have talked to people all over this country. I talked to a guy, 55 years of age. He's been paying off his student debt for 25 years. He is more, well, there's another one. He is more in debt today than he was when he took out that debt. People should not have to pay 20, 30, 40% of their incomes in student debt. And that is why we're going to give people the opportunity to refinance that debt at the lowest interest rates they can find. Now, what I'm often asked is people say, well, Bernie, that's a great idea. You're Santa Claus. You're giving away all this free stuff. You want public colleges and universities to be tuition free. You want to lower student debt. That's nice. How are you going to pay for that? I will tell you how we're going to pay for that. In the last 30 years, there has been a massive redistribution of wealth from the middle class to the top 0.1%. In other words, the very, very rich are getting richer. Almost everybody else is getting poorer. In 2008, 2009, the United States Congress bailed out Wall Street. Now, I believe that today we need to impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. That tax, again, not a radical idea, would bring in more revenue than we need to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and reduce student debt. The American people bailed out Wall Street. Now it is Wall Street's time to help the middle class of this country. There are Republicans running all over this country talking about family values. And I want everybody to know exactly what those Republicans mean when they talk about family values. What they are saying is that no woman in this arena, in this state, in this country should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. What they are saying when they talk about family values is that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to be married. I disagree. Jane and I have been married 27 years. We got 4 great kids, 7 beautiful grandchildren. When we talk about family values, our values are a little bit different than Republican values. We are talking about ending the international embarrassment of the United States being the only major country on earth not to provide paid family and medical leave. Today in Washington, today in Oregon, today in Vermont, a working class or low-income woman has a baby, and because she does not have sufficient funds in many cases, she will have to separate herself from that newborn baby in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and go back to work to earn enough money to take care of her family. We are one of the few countries in the world, not only major countries, even poor people, poor countries understand the absurdity of that. And that is why together we are going to pass legislation in Congress, 3 months paid family and medical leave. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Latino community. And they are telling me they are tired of living in the shadows, tired of being exploited, tired of living in fear. They want comprehensive immigration reform. I want comprehensive immigration reform. Comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. And if Congress does not do its job and pass immigration reform, I will use the executive powers of the president to do everything that I can. Immigration reform is about uniting families, not dividing families. Immigration reform is about stopping the deportations we see every day. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the African American community. And they are asking, number one, how does it happen that in this great country we have more people in jail than any other country on earth? 2.2 million people. Largely, disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native American. And they are asking, how does it happen that we keep turning on the television and we see unarmed people being shot by police officers? Now, I was a mayor for 8 years in Burlington, Vermont. I've worked with police throughout my entire life. Vast majority of police officers are honest and hardworking and have a very difficult job. It is not easy being a police officer today, but like any other public official, when a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. We have got to demilitarize local police departments. We have got to make police departments reflect the diversity of the communities in which they serve. We have got to rethink the so-called war on drugs. It turns out that over the last 30 years, millions of Americans have police records for possession of marijuana. It turns out that the Federal Controlled Substance Act lists marijuana as a Schedule I drug right next to heroin. That is why I've introduced legislation to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. But when we talk about drugs, all of us have got to recognize that in my state of Vermont, neighboring New Hampshire, and all over this country, we have a major crisis in terms of opiate addiction, heroin addiction, and people dying every day from overdoses. What we have got to do as a nation is to understand that the most effective way to deal with drug and alcohol abuse is not making them crimes, but making them health issues. And that takes us to another issue, and that is that we need a revolution in this country in mental health treatment. Whether it is substance addiction or whether it is mental health crises, such that today in this country, you got thousands of people at this moment who are walking the streets of this country who are suicidal and or homicidal. We need to make sure that people get the mental health treatment they need when they need it. This campaign is listening to the Native American community. And every person in this country who has studied American history for more than 5 minutes understands how disgracefully and shamefully we have treated the first Americans from day one. From day one, before this country was a country, Native Americans were lied to, they were cheated, and their treaties were abrogated. Right now, throughout this country, in Native American reservations and in Native American communities, unemployment rates sky high. In Native American communities, suicide rates are off the charts. Kids are dropping out of school. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse is rampant. If elected president, we will change our relationship to the Native American community. We owe that community so much. The best parts of our culture emanate from them. And by the way, when we talk about respect for the environment, when we talk about understanding that we have to live as part of nature, not against nature, that's what we got from Native Americans. I am a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment, and in that regard, I have talked to scientists throughout our country and throughout the world. The debate is over. Climate change is real, caused by human activity. And what the scientists are telling us is pretty scary, and that is, in many ways, they have underestimated the potential danger of climate change. They now tell us that by the end of this century, this planet could be 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer, more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the oceans, more rising sea levels, more international conflict as people fight over limited natural resources. We have a moral responsibility to future generations to make certain that the planet we leave them is healthy and habitable. We have got to, in an unprecedented way, because this is a planetary crisis, not an American crisis, a planetary crisis. We have got to work with China, Russia, India, countries all over this world, take on the fossil fuel industry and tell them that their short-term profits are not worth the future of this planet. And when we do that, we can create millions of decent-paying jobs in wind, solar, geothermal, and other sustainable energies. Coal is not the future of this country. Oil is not the future of this country. Energy efficiency and sustainable energy is the future of this country. Now, I have been criticized very often for saying this, so let me say it again. In my view, health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. That's right. This is a basic human issue. And what it means is that at a time when every other major country, the UK, France, Germany, Holland, Italy, Scandinavia, Canada, all of them managed to provide health care to all people as a right, you know what? We can and we will do that in the United States. Now, the Affordable Care Act, and I'm on the committee that helped write the Affordable Care Act, has done some very good things. We've gotten rid of pre-existing conditions. 17 million Americans now have health insurance who did not. We have done away with discrimination against women in health care premiums because they are women. But we still have a long way to go. Today, 29 million have no health insurance, and many of you have high deductibles and high co-payments. Is that right? And if you got a high deductible, a high co-payment, you don't have any money, you know what happens? You don't go to a doctor. And the result of that is that every year thousands of Americans die because they don't go to the doctor when they should. And then we have the absurd situation of the drug companies ripping us off unconscionably. We pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. People in this country die because they can't afford the medicine that they need. They are suffering because they can't afford the medicine they need. 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the prescriptions their doctors are writing. And last year, the 3 major drug companies made $45 billion in profit. Drug companies profit and Americans die. We are going to change that dynamic. And on top of all of that, we end up spending far more than any other country for health care, almost 3 times the British, 50% more than the French, and far more than the Canadians. And that is why, together, we will fight for a Medicare for all health care system. Our proposal guarantees health care, comprehensive health care to all, saves middle-class families thousands of dollars a year on their health care bills. Everybody in this room, in this arena, understands a very profound political point, and that is that in our country, real change never takes place from the top on down, always occurs from the bottom on up. A 100 years ago, when workers were being exploited ruthlessly, were being treated like animals and had no rights on the job, very brave people came together and said, we are going to form unions, we're going to engage in collective bargaining. A long time ago, you had incredibly brave African Americans and their white allies saying that in America, we are going to fight for a country where segregation, racism, bigotry does not exist. And those people, black and white and Latino, they marched out on the streets, they went to jail, some of them died, but they fought to fight against racism in America from the bottom on up. 100 years ago today, and many young people don't even know this, 100 years ago today, women did not have the right to vote, did not have the right to get the education they want, did not have the right to do the work they wanted to do. But women and their male allies said, no, in America, women will not be second-class citizens. We will fight against sexism. And went to jail, incredibly courageous, incredibly courageous. 100 years ago, women standing up, going on hunger strikes, went to jail, died, and they ended up getting the right to vote and making major advances against sexism. If we were in this arena 10 years ago, no time at all, from a historical perspective, and I want you to think about it, 10 years ago, somebody here jumps up and says, you know, Bernie, I think that by the year 2015, gay people in this country will be able to marry in 50 states in America. If somebody said that 10 years ago, the person next to him would have said, you are nuts, what are you smoking? Now, but what happened is that for decades, against incredible bigotry, vicious bigotry, the gay community and their straight allies said over and over again that in this country, people have the right to love whomever they want, regardless of their gender. And I'll give you another example, close to home, about how real change takes place. And that's what I'm talking about. How do we make real change? If we were here 7 years ago, no time at all, and somebody jumps up and says, you know, Bernie, this federal minimum wage of $7.25 is a starvation wage. People can't live on it. We are going to have to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, if somebody said that 7 years ago, person next to him said, you're crazy. You're talking about more than doubling the federal minimum wage. You're nuts. It can't happen. That's too radical an idea. But you know what happened? Very brave people in the fast food industry, in McDonald's and in Burger King and in Wendy's, they went out on strike and they protested. And they made the case that every American deserves a living wage. And then you know what happened? In Seattle, $15 an hour. In Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in Oregon, $15 an hour. My point is that what starts off as a radical idea, in a few years people say, well, of course $7.25 is starvation. Of course people need $15 an hour. Where we are right now is at a pivotal moment in American history where I believe millions of people are looking around them and they are saying the status quo is not acceptable. And they are saying it is too late for establishment politics, establishment economics, the same old, same old. They are saying, look, let's be clear, people who are funded by Wall Street and the drug companies are really not going to be the agents of change that we need. People all over this country are looking around and they're suddenly seeing it. Now, the media doesn't talk about it, and that's another problem that we have. But people are looking around them and say, why is the middle class of this country disappearing? Why do we have grotesque levels of income and wealth inequality? Why is it that we are the only major country on earth without paid family and medical leave, without health care for all? Why are millions of people leaving school and going deeply in debt? Why do we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth? Why do we have more people in jail than any other country? Why do we have a campaign finance system that allows billionaires to buy elections? Why do we have veterans sleeping out on the street when we give tax breaks to the richest people in this country? And that is what this campaign is about. It is about not accepting the status quo, to understand that if we do not allow the Trumps of the world to divide us up, if we stand together as black and white and Latino and Asian American and Native American, gay and straight, men and women, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. What this campaign is about is understanding we need a political revolution, millions of people standing up and demanding a government that represents all of us, not a handful of wealthy campaign contributors. Tomorrow, in the state of Washington, starting at 10 a.m., there will be caucuses all over the state. And starting on April 27th, people will begin to get their ballots in the state of Oregon. It is my hope and belief that both Washington and Oregon are prepared to help lead this country into a political revolution. Washington and Oregon can help transform this country. Let's do it. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, that was Bernie Sanders' live rally, and you could see what a big, big crowd he drew. And the camera is panning for him. The camera did pan for Bernie Sanders.